With the latest reveals, it's now officially confirmed that version 3.5 is bringing both XUANLING and SUISUI as the next 5-star characters. So in this video, I'll be breaking down each character's potential, the teams they could fit into, and the synergies worth paying attention to. Then at the end, I'll go over their overall value and which characters you might actually want to prioritize for your account. Now that Lucilla and the collab banners are here and the major drip characters has been announced, I want to quickly talk about a website that offers tons of discounts that I have been using for game top-ups lately, and that's Cards. If you are planning to top up for Wuthering Waves, Cards is currently offering some amazing deals. New users can get up to 40% off their first purchase, while returning users can still save starting from 7% off regular orders. You can save up to $101 on your first top up, enjoy fast and reliable delivery, and instantly claim extra homepage coupons, including up to 7% off larger purchases. If you purchase 6000 plus 1600 Lunites package or the all-in-one bundle, you will receive a free monthly card plus additional high-value coupons with no minimum spending required. They also have exclusive homepage coupons available. You can instantly claim all available discounts with a single click, including extra 7% off orders over $145 and extra 5% off orders over $29. These discounts are applied directly during checkout. On top of that, Cards is running a summer event shop where you can manually collect additional discount coupons worth up to 10 to 15% off. Secure your favorite characters with Cards now. Now, starting with XUANLING, she'll be arriving as the main face of version 3.5. We already covered her animations and abilities in the previous video, and everything there strongly suggested that she should be the newest main DPS in the game. Now that she's officially confirmed as Havoc Resonator, that assumption feels even more likely. We have not received a dedicated Havoc DPS since Frolova back in 2.5, and the newest Havoc unit we got was Chisa, who's clearly more support-oriented. On top of that, Yangyang is basically the poster character of Wuthering Waves, so there are a lot of signs pointing toward her being designed as a top-tier main carry. With that in mind, the thing that could separate her from the current Havoc DPS options is the possibility that her kit revolves around the Havoc main mechanic. Right now, the only notable Havoc DPS focuses heavily on echo skill damage, so XUANLING could either become another standard Havoc damage dealer or introduce an entirely different mechanic into the archetype. Personally, I think there's a decent chance Kuro wants to expand more into negative status gameplay. We have already seen more of those types of characters lately, and it's going to make sense for them to continue covering every attribute with its own negative status interaction. Chisa being in the game since 2.8 also adds to that idea because she already applies stacks of Havoc Bane as part of her support utility. Now, Chisa works well as a universal support too, so technically there does not have to be a dedicated Havoc Bane DPS attached to her. But the fact that she specifically applies Havoc Bane stacks makes it feel like the perfect setup for a future DPS designed to capitalize on that mechanic. So honestly, the chances of Yangyang being a negative status DPS feels pretty high, especially considering that SUISUI also looks like she will be another negative status support, and she ends up being the premium team for XUANLING later on. XUANLING ends up functioning as a Havoc Bane DPS, and she'll probably play somewhat similarly to characters like Hyuki and Amiet. She will apply Havoc Bane stacks through certain abilities while having some kind of stance switch mechanic tied to her gameplay. The setup will let her rely heavily on the Havoc Bane mechanic while still giving her flexibility when switching into another state. So even if she's built around negative status gameplay, there's still a good chance she will work comfortably with more universal supports and generate damage buffers as well. This also supported with her damage that will be considered as heavy attack damage. So this means even outside of NS roster, using sub DPS unit like Frolova or even Yuno could still work well, since their outro could amplify heavy attack damage. As for her abilities themselves, one thing I want to point out is that XUANLING looks like she will have a really strong AoE potential. A lot of her attacks seems to cover large areas and hit multiple enemies consistently. In addition, that said, I think she will also be as specialized for crowd control focused content as someone like Frolova, mainly because she has traction in her combat role and her kit seems centered around grouping or locking enemies down. Because of that, Frolova should still hold a lot of value in modes like Wuthering Waves, but in boss focused content such as Tower of Adversity or Matrix, I can absolutely see XUANLING outperforming most other main DPS options. A huge reason for that is the core effect of Havoc Bane itself. Since it reduces enemy defense, XUANLING would naturally end up dealing much higher damage whenever she's actively applying stacks. So overall, I fully expect XUANLING to be incredibly strong DPS unit, and honestly, considering she's the face of Wuthering Waves, I think that's exactly what most players are expecting anyway. When it comes to team synergies for negative status units, the structure is usually pretty straightforward. Most of the time you end up with a dedicated sub DPS plus a support that together form the best possible setup for that archetype. So similar to what happened with Amiet and Hyuki, XUANLING will probably need to wait a version or two before receiving a fully dedicated sub DPS partner. That unit will most likely arrive in later patch. Until then though, there are already some strong combinations that should work well. One example would be XUANLING paired with Chisa. With Chisa supporting from the backline and applying negative status effects, the composition starts looking really solid. There's also a good chance XUANLING's kit scales based on the number of Havoc Bane stacks applied to enemies, similar to how Hiyuki converts Glacial Shave stacks into Glacial Bite effects. On top of that, because XUANLING herself will likely be applying Havoc Bane stack constantly, she should benefit massively from Chisa's Ultra skill, just like every other negative status DPS does. Realistically, Chisa will probably remain part of XUANLING's best in-slot team even after a dedicated sub-DPS releases. So for now, it's fair to say Chisa could end up being XUANLING's strongest synergy overall. If you want a complete team synergies breakdown, you should check out my XUANLING kit breakdown video. But another alternative that I have not yet mentioned in my previous video is her synergy that will involve Linne. Without even looking what's the source of damage buff that XUANLING get, if using Linne, technically any DPS could work, thanks to the tons of buff she provides. If Linne ends up synergizing well with XUANLING, then Morny could also fit into the support slot. Morny already provides a huge amount of value through the buffs in her kit, and she performs even better alongside Linne. So if you don't own Chisa, or if you're already using her in another team, Morny could easily become your replacement support option instead. Another team setup with potential would be XUANLING, Chisa, and SUISUI together. There's definitely more uncertainty surrounding this composition since neither XUANLING nor SUISUI has a fully official kit yet, but based on everything shown in the beta so far, SUISUI appears to be a negative status support mainly designed around the Glacial Chef archetype, while still providing some universal utility. Because of that, running a double support setup alongside Chisa could actually end up being surprisingly effective. Of course, these are just some early composition based on the current information. Once XUANLING's exact damage scaling and mechanics are fully confirmed or the final version of the beta, there will probably be even more viable options available. But even now, she already seems flexible enough to fit into several strong teams. Now moving on to the second phase character, we have SUISUI. As mentioned earlier, she's officially confirmed as Glacial Resonator and is almost certainly going to be a support unit. That was already pretty obvious from her early gameplay footage, but it became even clearer after seeing her deliberation create a domain effect similar to characters like Showkeeper and Morny. So the support role itself is not really surprising. The important part is specifically that she is a Glacial support, especially considering Lucilla just released as the Glacial Chef sub DPS for Hiyuki. If anything, that makes SUISUI look even more like a dedicated support built specifically for that composition. One detail players should really keep in mind is Hiyuki's Outro skill. It provides Glacial damage amplification to every teammate except Hiyuki herself. That means both sub DPS and support units benefit heavily from it. Because of that mechanic, it always felt inevitable that we would eventually get a Glacial focus support to complete the full Glacial Chef setup. I just honestly did not expect the final piece to arrive this quickly, especially since Chisa already exists. Still, if SUISUI truly becomes a dedicated Glacial Chef support, it would finally allow players to run both the Monofusion team and the Glacial Chef team simultaneously. We'll basically have dedicated negative status support for multiple archetypes, including Havoc Bane composition as well. At this point, it feels almost guaranteed that SUISUI is intended to fill that role. So she's going to increase the cap for negative status stacks similar to Chisa while also applying Glacial Chef stacks through different abilities. That will be incredibly valuable for Hiyuki because it directly increases both the number of Glacial Bite procs and the frequency of enemy freezes. On top of that, SUISUI will offer sustain utility like healing as well. Combined with buffs such as all damage amplification or general attack boost, she could become one of the strongest support unit for negative status teams overall. And since she may also raise the stack cap for all negative status instead of only Glacial Chef, there's a strong chance she will have universal value beyond just one archetype. Obviously, she will still provide the most value in Glacial Chef team specifically, but for balancing purposes, I can definitely see Kuro designing her as a broader negative status support with applications across multiple comps. Right now, it's pretty safe to assume that SUISUI will become the best in-slot support for Hiyuki and Lucilla. With all three together, Glacial Chef stacks would build insanely fast, leading to constant Glacial Bite damage and near non-stop freezing. And because of Hiyuki's Ultra amplification, SUISUI herself may actually contribute respectable damage too. Considering she's essentially replacing Chisa in that team, it would not even be shocking if she ends up outperforming Chisa damage-wise under Glacial buffs, which would naturally push the team's total DPS even higher. So there's no question that SUISUI will be amazing support for the Glacial Chef composition. That said, I do want to point out that Chisa should still remain a perfectly strong option. The main reason you would prioritize SUISUI is either because you want the absolute best version of the team, or because you need Chisa available for another negative status comp. That's where SUISUI's flexibility becomes really valuable. If you are running future Havoc Bane teams, Fusion Burst setups, or Aero Erosion comms, then being able to play Suisui in one team while Chisa supports another gives you significantly more freedom for endgame content. In a lot of ways, Suisui basically feels like another version of Chisa, except with more specialized value toward Glacier Chef teams. Depending on her final buffs, she could even end up useful for non-negative status characters too. Of course, she's not going to be the best option for that. The reason I say this is because of the 25% damage amplification she provides to the whole team through her outro. As for the attack buff, unfortunately it will only work for Hiyuki and XUANLING. It won't work for other DPS that can't consume negative status from their skills. But if you compare her flexibility to Shorekeeper, it's obvious that Shorekeeper remains the winner here, since she literally can be paired with any comms. The same goes for S1 Morny. Overall, Suisui looks extremely good, and with more negative status characters likely releasing in the future, her long-term value could end up being huge, especially if you want to pull the first playable Sentinel whose abilities will likely revolve around NS, specifically Electro Flare. As a whole, version 3.5 is shaping up to be an excellent update. We already know there's going to be a massive expansion involving Huanglong, but even outside of the region content, the characters themselves look incredibly strong. Not only we are getting the poster girl of Wuthering Waves, but we are also getting another premium support unit. Based on the endgame's current situation, Matrix really highlights how badly players need more supports to keep up with the growing number of DPS characters. And historically, premium supports always age better than main DPS units in the long run. That alone gives Suisui a massive amount of value. XUANLING will almost definitely be a top tier DPS, there's basically no chance she is not. But unlike supports, there are already plenty of strong main DPS options competing for spots in the meta. So her value depends heavily on your current roster and whether your account actually needs another carry. Of course, if you simply love XUANLING design or end up enjoying her character in 3.5, then there's really no reason not to pull for her, especially since players have been waiting forever for a proper Havoc main DPS. But before committing to XUANLING, I do think it's important to seriously consider Suisui as well, maybe even over XUANLING depending on your account. If you already own multiple negative status teams, Suisui could easily provide more overall value because of the flexibility she brings. If you don't really play those archetypes though, then there's naturally less pressure to pull for her. At the end of the day, both characters look like they will be extremely valuable additions. It really just comes down to which one benefits your account the most. And that's it for who to pull between the two new limited characters in 3.5 of Wuthering Waves. Overall, who are you planning to pull? Are you considered to pull both of them, or even skip all of them? Please share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button, turn notification as well so you won't be missing out on any of my Wuthering Waves content. I will see you guys on my next one. Bye bye!